Well, there's a lot of reasons why we think we have a special cancer center and that it's somewhat unique among the more famous big cancer centers in the United States. I think it starts with our philosophy in which we put patients first. That's one of the mottos of the Cleveland Clinic. We do everything we can to acknowledge what a patient is going through when they're diagnosed with cancer. We need to care greatly about patients and their families. We need to be good at what we do, which means we have to have the latest treatments available and actively, very actively participate in all sorts of cancer research. We have literally over 400 clinical trials open as I speak, which are testing the next development in cancer therapy, whether it's immunological therapy or genomic therapy, and seeing if it works in people. The clinic has made more of a commitment to cancer research in 2021 than it ever has in its history, and that's by a lot. We have recruited some profoundly talented laboratory researchers who have already demonstrated an ability to be practice-changing in terms of the work they do. We have secured all sorts of funding to expand our laboratory space, including space to manufacture cells, to try to treat a variety of cancers. We have doubled down on our commitment to have research at Cleveland Clinic, Florida. We're very connected clinically to the Florida Cancer Center, and they share in our tumor boards all the time. And we have constant dialogue with them, and it's been a remarkable growth down there. 7 years ago, Florida built its own cancer building, which includes radiation therapy, which is the first time they had that. And since then, the growth of the Florida cancer effort, as well as the number of physicians that we have, has taken off rather dramatically. VeloSano has been a really big deal to our cancer center, and it's an event. It's more than an event. It's a group of people who share a passion for the importance of this, of trying to help people with cancer and putting their efforts where their mouths are and actually doing something that's tangible to allow some very talented people to have resources to try to figure out how to come up with better ways to learn about cancer and to treat cancer patients. You have to experience VeloSano to realize its impact. I think that it's almost a spiritual thing, and I think it's incredibly special. And now I'd like to introduce Dr. Dale Shepard, who's going to introduce a variety of very, very intelligent researchers who are going to share with you some of their exciting breakthroughs in work.
VeloSano's motto is 100% for the cure, because every single dollar that the participants raise as a donation goes straight to research. I'm very proud of the fact that we are funding some very, very innovative research here. There are many, many ways that you can participate in VeloSano. You can set any activity you want as your goal. You can raise money in that way. You can swim, you can ride, you can run, you can cross-stitch, you can kayak, anything you want to do. So we have the Bike to Cure weekend, and we have people who ride in that event anywhere from 10 miles to 100 miles. You can volunteer for the event, and you can donate. And now it has moved from not only a bike ride, but now it's the year-long fundraising initiative for cancer research at Cleveland Clinic. Everyone has been impacted by cancer. We never have enough therapies. We need to have a better way to get cancer treated, prevention, screening, and the dollars that we have raised, we have been able to make significant impact. That money that you donate for cancer research has been able to fund some very innovative research. But one of the most important things we've been able to do is have something called pilot awards. These are projects that take 1 to 2 years to complete. It goes through a peer review process. The investigators will submit the ideas. It's reviewed by a committee, and that committee picks the very best ideas to fund. A cancer researcher can have a great idea, but if they apply to federal funding, for instance, only about 10% of those projects are ever funded. By using VeloSano dollars, they can do a couple of things. They can prove that they can do the work, and they can get some data to make their application stronger. That's how we've been able to turn $24 million in donations to an additional $22 million in research funding. Next up, you're going to hear from some of our most recent VeloSano grant recipients. They're going to share how donations to VeloSano have positively impacted their research. I invite you to learn more about VeloSano and to get involved.
If you've always wanted to know how your charitable contributions help to advance life-saving cancer research at Cleveland Clinic, you've come to the right place. I'm Dr. Justin Lathia, a brain tumor researcher, and I'm joined by Dr. Charles Martin, who studies liver cancer and kidney cancer, Dr. Ruth Keri, who studies breast cancer, and Dr. Adrian Lesmana, who studies hereditary cancer predispositions. Dr. Martin, why don't you tell us a little bit more about your project?
Thank you. My project uses augmented reality to treat liver cancers and kidney cancers. We use holograms to perform the procedures in a more minimally invasive way. It allows us to more effectively and efficiently treat these cancers. It's using a similar technology that you may have seen in movies like Iron Man or games such as Pokemon Go.
Dr. Kerry, why don't you share some insight about your project?
All of us are made of DNA, and that DNA is our blueprint. It makes us who we are. It controls what we look like, how we behave. Tumors are the same way. They have their own DNA, and that DNA is sort of messed up from what the normal DNA is. My project is looking at what controls how that DNA gets messed up, and our ultimate goal is to find out from that knowledge that we learned how to treat tumors and make them go away.
Dr. Lismana, would you mind telling us what your project is about?
Absolutely. So the goal of my research is to identify a reason why children develop cancers. So recently we found out that about 10% of our cancer patients will develop cancers because they have inherited those genes coming from their parents. And my goal is to use whole exome sequencing and other next generation sequencing to look at their genetics makeup to see if there is a new findings explaining these cancers.
And Justin, you do a lot of great science too. Do you want to tell us what you're doing in your project?
Absolutely. Thanks, Ruth. So we're very interested in how brain tumor cells interact with their surrounding environment. So it's interesting because these tumors grow amongst normal cells, and there seems to be a communication between cancer cells and their surrounding environment. So we're really interested in this language of communication. And more specifically, we found recently that cancer cells can actually take parts of cells from their surrounding environment to fuel their growth and to provide a way to not respond to current therapies, like radiation and chemotherapy. Dr. Martin, I was really interested in this idea that some of the technology you're using is really also used by movies like Iron Man. Can you tell me more about how you got to this place and maybe the historical background on where you started?
Well, I should probably add that I'm just a little bit of a techie just in general. So I love the field of mixed reality, augmented reality, virtual reality. And that's kind of how it started. As an interventional radiologist, I don't have the luxury of, let's say, some of my surgical colleagues who are actually performing procedures in a more open manner. Everything I do is using image guidance, whether it's ultrasound, CAT scan, MRI, and performing it in a minimally invasive fashion using catheters and wires and such. And the ability to kind of use this technology, augmented reality, to essentially kind of provide that three-dimensionality and get a greater view of the patient, essentially using their own pre-procedural imaging, it's been a lot of fun and super interesting.
Dr. Kerry, your work is so cool in that you're parsing out fundamental parts of what makes us us and what makes a cancer cell different. Could you tell us a little bit more about how you got to this point?
Yeah, so I've always been interested in genes and how genes work. I just love thinking about it. You know, your genome has about 25,000 genes, and they all work together in the right way to make you and make a cancer a cancer. So the way we got onto this project is we were treating cells with a brand new type of drug, and we were using live cell imaging, so watching the cells through a microscope where you can see the chromosomes which package all the genes. You could see those be pulled apart between the two cells that come from one cell. And what we noticed is when we treat with a drug, those chromosomes get stuck. Instead of going to one cell or another, they get pulled between both of them, and ultimately they break. Now, you can imagine a broken chromosome is a bad thing. So we started to figure out that's how this drug works, and then we started to say, what makes those chromosomes break? And that's what this project is about, is a particular protein that controls how you move one chromosome from one cell to another.
That's fantastic. I mean, how much has this really been inspired by a lot of the advances in genetics? I just feel like the more we know about the genome, the more we don't know about the genome.
Yeah, absolutely. The genome is very complicated. Like I said, we have many genes. We know the function of maybe 25%, maybe 30% of them. So there's always new genes to be discovered. I guess at some point we'll know what they all do. And the really neat thing is we're now able to control how genes get turned on and turned off. That is a remarkable advancement that has happened in probably the last 5 to 10 years. So pretty soon we're going to be able to control very specific genes, and we can turn bad genes off, turn good genes on, and hopefully that will reverse how aggressive a cancer is.
It sounds like when one door opens, another one appears. And you sort of mentioned the ability to turn these genes on and off. I mean, how close are we, do you think, to leveraging that for cancer therapies?
Well, right now, the drugs we use turn on and off a whole bunch of genes. So we have to refine that and be much more selective. One of the things that we're doing in our project is looking at a protein that controls just a subset of genes. Now, if we can target that with a drug, and we think we can because it's in this group of proteins called druggable, meaning that they should be able to make a drug to it, then we'll have a smaller set of genes that get regulated. So it's a long path. You know, we have to do the discovery part, then we have to do lots of modeling to see how it works, and then ultimately implementation, which is going to clinical trials. But it takes a long time, but we're on the path.
Oh, it sounds really exciting. So, Dr. Lesmana, what sort of drove you to think about the project in the way you did? I guess the question I'm asking is how did you get to where you are?
I am a clinical geneticist, and I'm also a pediatric hematologist and oncologist. So what it means that I take care of patients with genetic disorders, but at the same time, I'm also taking care of patients with pediatric patient with cancer. So when I diagnose patient with cancers, the first thing that the parents would ask me, like, why my kid get cancers? So it seems like a simple questions, but it's actually not that easy to answer that questions. So in this study, what I'm planning to do is to look at the pattern of cancers in a family. Because sometimes despite doing a very thorough clinical evaluation and sending multiple genetic testing, we couldn't really figure out why someone gets, or a family gets cancer. So there are some deficit in knowledge there. I think there are newer genes that has not been identified that predispose someone to develop cancers. And with this new advancement in technology, with the ability to rapidly sequence multiple genes, we are hopeful that we'll be able to identify those novel genes or newer genes in a more rapid pace.
It seems like the new technologies really put you in the driver's seat to gain a deeper insight into what's going on. I mean, how do you imagine the technology is going to evolve from here?
Yeah, I think the technology of genomic sequencing it's much better than even 10 years ago. And our ability to sequence this multiple part of the genomes is much better right now. But I think that the problem right now is how to interpret those data and to really understand what it means. So I think now we have the ability not to look at the genes that that tells us what to do, but also those area, which is the 99% of our genomes that basically control the other 1%. So I think in the future, I believe that we'll have more or better understanding on how to interpret those data.
It sounds like a lot of the work you're doing is really foundational. It's fundamental in understanding what happens. So let's say you discover a really important mutation. Can you take us through what you would do next?
Yeah, so when you find a novel gene, then you technically find a reason why a patient developed cancers. Then you learn about the pathways, right? And then by knowing the pathways, by knowing which genes interacting with the other part of the genes, you could potentially find a potential newer treatment for that type of cancers. And that's just the overarching goals of doing this study. But there are also other things that are also beneficial from finding out why someone developed a cancer if there is an underlying problem, because it will allow us to provide genetic counseling for other at-risk family members, because people always thought that it was a sporadic thing that just happened, it was a bad luck. But if we know that there's a reason why a family has so many family members with cancers, then we can offer testing and counseling for other at-risk family members, so we can perform surveillance for cancers. So when they do develop cancer, we diagnose them at a lot earlier time, which may translate to better prognosis as far as the treatment goes.
So Dr. Keri, as a scientist, I think sometimes people think that we're a little bit behind the shadows. But in your own words, how do you feel about being part of the cutting edge of next generation cancer therapies, and what does it really mean to you?
Yeah, I feel really honored. I feel honored and responsible. So people give me money to do new science, and I try to do my best to make new discoveries that will have an impact on patient care. And I understand it's going to be a long road till we get there, but I'm so excited every day to come in and think about maybe we've learned something about this disease, and maybe we can move our therapies forward so that we can treat this disease.
Dr. Martin, you're with patients day in and day out. Can you tell me sort of how it feels when you are playing a part in possibly alleviating some of the issues that a patient has that has cancer?
I mean, the feeling, in some ways, it's indescribable. I mean, just to maybe try to put some words to it, it's humbling. It's inspiring. It's empowering. The willingness of a patient to put a piece of their care at any moment in the hands of myself and my team it's a pretty incredible feeling. When we have opportunities with regard to research and through this work to be able to do that on a larger scale, there's no feeling in the world like it.
So Dr. Lesmana, you're in some ways really on the front lines. Can you describe a little bit of that?
I think it's a remarkable role, and I'm humbled to be part of that community. And I think we will not stop until we cure every children with cancer. As someone in the front line, we know exactly what the patient is going through and what the family is going through. We know the challenges with current treatment, what is missing from what we use at this point. I think we have made remarkable improvement in improving the outcome of our children with cancers. If you see in 1960s, only maybe 2 out of 10 survived, but now in 2020, about 8 out of 10, 80%. So from 20% to 80%, we've seen a remarkable improvement in their survival because of all the research that we've been doing. But we do not want to stop there, because some of these patients, they are unique. These children, they get chemotherapeutic agents, that have long-term side effects. So what we are trying to do here with a lot of research that we've been doing in the pediatric world is how not only to cure them, but also to improve their quality of life.
Yeah, can I just build on what our colleagues are saying? I think it's so important, the day-to-day care of our patients, but also the science that we're doing is going to have an impact on many, many more people as we progress forward. And I just find that so exciting and fantastic.
And that's really one of the things that drives me, and we talk about it in the lab every day, is that we have a rare opportunity to learn something new that no one else in the history of humanity has ever known before. And I often tell even the youngest members of the lab, once you get that feeling, it's powerful, it's indescribable. And as a scientist, to me, that's what drives me.
Yeah, I would say it's almost an addiction, right? Once you realize you know something that nobody else knows, I think it's the coolest thing in the world.
So science is actually a team sport, and a lot of what we do, whether it's in the lab or in the clinic, involves working together as teams. Dr. Keri, could you tell us a little bit about how, through your VeloSano project, you're working together in a team environment?
Yeah, there's two ways I work in a team. One of them is with clinical collaborators. I'm a PhD scientist. I really love thinking about molecules and genes and chromosomes. But to make my work relevant, I need to have clinical collaborators who understand the disease. The disease I work in is breast cancer, and I have to say I have a fabulous team that I work with. Medical oncologists, radiation oncologists, surgeons, and we all meet together and discuss the project and the directions forward. It helps us keep centered because it makes us work on something that is very important to the patient. The other team I work with is the trainees in my lab. I have a whole host of graduate students, people who are earning their PhDs from Case Western. And those students, they're amazing. They're very excited about the work that they do and about learning, and they teach me new things every single day. I just love working with them, and it's really building the next generation of scientists who are going to do even more cancer research.
Dr. Lesmana, can you tell us a little bit about how you're working in a team as well?
Absolutely, I think collaboration is essential. As Dr. Kerry mentioned, that as a basic scientist, you will need clinicians, and I am on the other end of that spectrum. I'm a clinician, but I'm also a scientist. But I also need to collaborate with basic scientists. When I identify novel genes that we do not know what it means at this point, we would like to collaborate with those people who has done a lot of research on that particular genes, maybe not directly related to human, but maybe it was something that was done in the mouse, or maybe it was done in the plants. So I cannot emphasize how important it is to have collaboration between the basic scientists and the clinicians, and also those people that works in between.
Dr. Martin, it seems like in some ways you're the eyes of the procedure as a radiologist. Can you tell us more about how you're working together in a team?
I feel in a lot of ways really fortunate that the work that we do here, not just here actually in the lab, but here at the Cleveland Clinic, our project I think has kind of encountered a pretty unique collaborative or team effort. We have the opportunity to work with actually trainees, whether it's my residents or fellows that I'm honored and fortunate enough to work with, in that what we do using augmented reality to perform these procedures. The hope is that it actually kind of lessens the learning curve and makes procedures easy, and as well as making procedures a little bit more efficient. Additionally, we also actually collaborate both with computer scientists and engineers, and fortunately through the work and through this research, we've actually been able to spin some of our work out to also collaborate with industry. We're developing medical devices.
But one of the things that we often do talk about is sharing. And I wanted to touch on this just briefly, Dr. Keri, when we think about science. And I think it's really important that we continue to share our results and communicate our results, because Dr. Lesmana is trying to cure pediatric cancers. Dr. Martin is working hard on liver cancer and kidney cancer. But I think as a community, right, the more we come together, the more we collaborate, the more we share, the closer we're going to get to these goals.
Yeah, absolutely. We cannot operate in silos. Those days are gone. We need each other, we need to work together, and we need to inform each other so we can do much better science and really move the needle forward.
We're sort of describing a pipeline where we start with findings in the lab and we end up in the clinic. But in reality, we also are doing a lot of things where we're taking clinical observations. Why do patients respond or not respond to therapies? What is different about a patient's tumor compared to something else? And we're actually using that as a basis to start our laboratory investigations. So it's really not a continuum. It's really sort of circular in a way. And I think that's where a place like the Cleveland Clinic is really unique, and especially with opportunities like VeloSano, because again, that's really the catalyst to help move a lot of these projects back and forth between the laboratory and the clinic. So as you know, there's many different cancer charities and cancer research charities. Why is the Cleveland Clinic special or unique in these aspects?
We are one of the top pediatric cancer centers in the United States. So we see unique cases where we could learn from, and hopefully by doing research on some of these unique patients, it will open up opportunities to studies other patients as well. And it might also open up the opportunity to study a new pathways or a new genes that might be important in why someone develop a cancers. And eventually, in the long run, we might be able to find a specific drugs that can target that medicine. So I think Cleveland Clinic is very well positioned to be especially in the pediatric cancers as well, to be in a front leader in cancer research.
Dr. Keri, as a laboratory scientist, what makes Cleveland Clinic unique for you?
Yeah, one of the hardest things for a PhD scientist to do is translational research, which means research that is disease relevant. It's really hard because the PhDs tend to work in a vacuum. And the great thing about the Cleveland Clinic is that you don't work in a vacuum. You have all these great clinical collaborators surrounding you, and they're just as interested in your science as you are, and they're willing to help you. And they're also willing to inform you. If you're going down the bad path, they'll help you go the right way. So that's one thing I think is fantastic about the clinic. The other is there's just exceptional technology here. We can do basically any types of experiments we want to do. There's expertise here to help us, and it's just a great place to make new discoveries.
We often use this phrase that we're a team of teams, and I think your description there just reinforced that. But you also talked about technology and how it has empowered your discoveries. Dr. Martin, in terms of technology, what has made Cleveland Clinic so unique in this respect?
Honestly, I think what makes us so unique is the people, probably even more so than the technology. It's the culture here. I think that we're incredibly fortunate to have a unique blend of physicians, researchers, and resources that kind of allow everything to kind of come together in this really kind of special way to provide really advanced therapies using all of these different technologies.
Yeah, I mean, I really like your description. We're not only treating diseases here, but we're studying diseases, and we're doing this simultaneously and in parallel. And I think where VeloSano really comes in is it provides a reinforcement for this. And I'm sure you've heard this before, but one of the unique things about VeloSano is every dollar, every penny that's raised goes directly into cancer research here at the Cleveland Clinic. So I think that's another aspect that makes the Cleveland Clinic unique. So VeloSano is really important for raising funds for cancer research. But where do those funds go, and what's their impact?
With the assistance of VeloSano, it's allowing us to realize our dream, our goal of advancing our research towards commercialization, towards applying for additional NIH funds to actually move our project further toward helping even more people.
So what VeloSano Funds provides me is to build that foundation for future research. What I mean by saying that is my goal is to be able to create a biorepository and also to create a good clinical registry for all of these patients with familial cancers. And with some of the seed funding provided by VeloSano, we can start gathering some preliminary data that might be useful for us researchers to apply for a future grant in the future for bigger research.
Dr. Keri, how has VeloSano positioned you in your project?
As you know, it's very competitive to get a grant from the NIH. And to be able to get a grant from the NIH, you need to have preliminary data. The only way we can get preliminary data is if we have other funds that can support those very early ideas, that can transition them from just a concept to having some data to show that the concept actually might be real. And then we can put together a big grant and compete at the NIH and hopefully get into that top 11%, which is what you need to do to get one of those grants.
And I can actually speak about my own experience with this. The first set of funds we received years ago, we were actually able to test an idea, which has actually since been used and tested in patients and been the basis of a large-scale NIH grant. So I really do feel like it may be a small amount of money or a small amount of effort, but this is really the spark that a lot of our ideas need. So this year, Cleveland Clinic is celebrating its 100th anniversary. So how do you envision the next 100 years looking like in terms of cancer research, Dr. Keri?
Well, I work on breast cancer, and what I would love to see in the next 100 years is that no daughter has to see their mother suffer from breast cancer. I think that would be a beautiful future for us, and I think it's possible.
Yeah, and if I could build on that, Dr. Keri, my lab studies brain tumors, and these are absolutely devastating. And my dream for the next 100 years would be is that this isn't a death sentence. If anything, it's a chronic disease at worst. So, your statement really resonates with me. I definitely feel like that's my hope for the next 100 years. So, Dr. Lesmana, what do you see the next 100 years looking like for pediatric cancers?
Yeah, I think we've seen a remarkable improvement in survival of patients with pediatric cancers already in the past 1 decade. We've done a lot of precision medicine, but I think I've seen that we are moving towards that pathways that we will be able to treat pediatric patients with cancer based on their genetic makeup. And in order to make it safer and more efficient, more effective, and with less side effects.
And Dr. Martin, as someone who embraces technology on a daily basis, what do you see the next 100 years looking like for your clinical practice in terms of cancer care?
Well, one of the things that I hope to see in the short term, let alone the long term, is that therapies just become even more and more minimally invasive. It's part of the reason why I went into the field I did. I think that that's certainly achievable, but I think where we're moving to a world of being able to kind of get a better understanding of things where they start, whether it's genetics or whether it's the microenvironment of what we're doing. I think that's truly going to lead to some of the biggest leaps forward.
Well, I wanted to thank Doctors Keri, Lesmana, and Martin for their time this evening, sharing really their thoughts about not only their cancer research projects, but the future of cancer research. But more importantly, I'd like to thank you, the audience, for joining us and the support you've given to the Cleveland Clinic in the form of cancer research funds.
I couldn't agree more with the sentiment. Thank you for the opportunity to continue our work here in this format.
Yeah, thank you so much for your support. Without your help, we couldn't have gone in directions that we're going into now. We really appreciate it.
And it's been a pleasure to be here and sharing our research projects, and specifically would like to thank to everyone who has been donating to VeloSano. And we believe that the goal of cure for every patient with cancer is very close, and I think it's all because of some of your support. Thank you.
To learn more about these projects, as well as others funded by VeloSano dollars, please visit impact.velosano.org to view the online VeloSano Impact Report. And just a reminder that Bike to Cure weekend has moved to September 10th through 12th. The traditional bike rides are back in person, along with virtual participation options. And whether you're looking to participate in VeloSano, make a donation, or look into volunteer opportunities, everyone can get involved by visiting velosano.org.